barely 2 weeks into our new boss's reign. He mocked my work in front of the entire team, stripped away the safety systems I built, and told HR I was the problem. So I quietly built a case that would rip his reputation apart when the day came. What he didn't know was that every dismissed warning, every ignored protocol, and every arrogant email would become ammunition in my arsenal. I wasn't just documenting failures. I was orchestrating his downfall with the precision of someone who'd spent 12 years keeping this plant running without a single major incident. My name is Rachel Morris, and for 12 years, I've been the operations supervisor at Arden Dynamics Mechanical Components Plant in Hawthorne, Illinois. 12 years without a single major incident. That's 4 out of the 380 days of keeping machines humming, workers safe, and production flowing like clockwork, until Evan Carver walked through our doors. He strutted into the all-hands meeting that Tuesday morning like he owned the air we breathed. 32 years old, fresh MBA, designer sneakers that had never seen factory floor grime. His introduction lasted 20 minutes, all buzzwords about disrupting manufacturing paradigms and leveraging synergies. The maintenance guys exchanged glances. The floor operators studied their boots. I kept my expression neutral, the way you do when corporate sends another wonder boy to optimize what isn't broken. Then he asked for our current safety protocols. I stood, holding the laminated checklist I'd refined over a decade, every line written in lessons learned, near misses avoided, disasters prevented. This is our daily inspection routine, I said, passing it forward. We check cooling systems at start of shift, monitor pressure readings every 2 hours, inspect. This, Evan held my checklist between 2 fingers like it was contaminated. This is exactly the problem. He actually laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a genuine bark of amusement that echoed off the break room walls. Paper checklists in 2024. What's next? Are we going to start using sundials to track shifts? The room went cemetery quiet. Even the vending machine seemed to hold its breath. This, he continued, waving my checklist for emphasis, is museum-quality thinking, analog processes in a digital world. He walked to the trash bin, the big gray one by the coffee station, and dropped it in. The laminated sheets made a hollow thunk against the plastic liner. Rachel, was it I appreciate your dedication to tradition, but we're building the future here, not preserving the past. My face burned, but I kept my voice steady. That checklist has prevented 14 potential shutdowns in the last year alone. Prevented. His eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Or created unnecessary work stoppages based on paranoid overthinking. Look, I get it. Change is scary, especially when you've been doing things the same way since... He glanced at his phone. Since before TikTok existed. But that's why I'm here, to drag this operation into the 21st century. Someone coughed. Jerry from maintenance, probably. He'd been here longer than me. Had seen 5 different optimizers come and go. But this felt different. The others had at least pretended to respect institutional knowledge. We'll be implementing a fully digitized inspection system by end of week, Evan announced, pulling up a presentation on his laptop. Everything tracked through our new app, quick ping, real-time updates, cloud storage, predictive analytics, no more clipboards, no more paper trails, no more, he gestured vaguely at me, resistance to progress. I sat down slowly, feeling 50 pairs of eyes on me, some sympathetic, some embarrassed for me, a few probably wondering if the new boss had a point. My hands stayed folded on the table, but underneath, my nails dug crescents into my palms. Any questions? Evan asked, but his tone made it clear questions were discouraged. Just one, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. What happens when the app crashes? He smiled, the kind of smile you'd give a child asking why the sky is blue. It won't, but I appreciate your concern. Rachel, actually, why don't you schedule some time with HR? They have excellent resources for helping long-term employees adapt to change. Might be good for you. The meeting ended 5 minutes later. People filed out quietly, avoiding eye contact with me. As I passed the trash bin, I could see my checklist through the gray plastic. 12 years of refinement treated like garbage. I didn't retrieve it, not yet. But I did take out my phone and snap a quick photo. The timestamp read 9:47 a.m., Tuesday, March 5th, The first piece of evidence in what would become a very thick file. The Quick Ping app launched that Friday with all the fanfare of a wet firecracker. Evan gathered us for a revolutionary moment in manufacturing history. His words, not mine. He held up his phone like a trophy, demonstrating how to log inspections with just 3 taps. The interface was sleek. I'll give him that. All gradients and smooth animations. The kind of design that wins awards in Silicon Valley and fails spectacularly on a factory floor. By Monday, the cracks were showing. "Rachel, this damn thing keeps freezing," Marcus called out from line 3, waving his phone. The temperature reading he'd tried to input 3 times had vanished into digital limbo. "Use the paper backup," I started, then caught myself. There was no paper backup. Evan had made sure of that. "Just restart the app," I said instead, watching the cooling unit Marcus was supposed to inspect. It was making a subtle clicking sound, new since last week. In the old days, that would have been flagged immediately. Now, Marcus was too busy fighting with his phone to notice. The maintenance schedule was the first casualty. Our old system had reminders built into the rhythm of the work itself. Check bearings when you heard the morning shift bell. Inspect hydraulics during the afternoon gauge walk. Simple, foolproof. Now everything depended on push notifications that nobody received, because Evan hadn't realized our concrete building blocked cell signals in half the plant. "It's fine," he said when I brought this up. "They can check the app when they're in coverage areas. The machines that need checking are in the dead zones," I pointed out. "Then they'll adapt. Evolution. Rachel, the strong adapt." I started my documentation that day, not obviously, just a small notebook I kept in my pocket. Every missed inspection, every delayed response, every "it's fine" that wasn't fine. I photographed gauge readings with my personal phone, timestamp and all. Created a folder in my cloud storage called Break Glass, innocuous enough if anyone saw it, clear enough for me to remember. Week 2 brought bigger problems. The overnight crew missed 3 lubrication cycles because the app's reminder system operated on Pacific time, Evan's oversight. Since he'd configured it from his previous job in San Francisco, bearings that should have been greased at 2 a.m. were running dry until 5 a.m. The whine from line 2 grew louder. "We need to maintain manual checks for critical systems," I told Evan during Tuesday's production meeting. He actually rolled his eyes. "Rachel, this resistance to change has been noted. I've already discussed your attitude with HR." "My attitude?" "Your inability to embrace innovation, your constant negativity about proven digital solutions. It's affecting team morale." I looked around the table. Jerry wouldn't meet my eyes. Marcus studied his coffee cup. Even Linda from Quality Control, who'd been my ally for years, stayed silent. "I'm trying to prevent equipment failure," I said carefully. "You're trying to maintain relevance," Evan shot back. "I get it. You've built your whole identity around being the safety guru, but that era is over. We have predictive algorithms now." "Your algorithms don't account for—" "Meeting's over," he interrupted. "Rachel, HR is expecting you at 2. The HR meeting was a masterpiece of corporate passive aggression. Diane, who'd known me since I started, pushed a paper across her desk titled Adaptive Workplace Strategies for Tenured Employees. "Evan's concerned about your integration with the new systems," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Diane, we've had 17 minor incidents since Quick Ping launched. 17 in 2 weeks. You know what our average was before." "This isn't about statistics, Rachel. It's about attitude." I signed her form, added my own notation at the bottom. Concerns about safety protocols formally expressed. Photographed it before handing it back. That night, I stayed late, walking the floor after everyone had left. The plant spoke differently when it was quiet. Every ping, every hiss, every vibration told a story. Line 2's bearing whine had developed a catch. The main cooling pipe had a faint tremor that shouldn't be there. The storage tank pressure gauges flickered between readings, unstable in a way that made my stomach tight. I documented it all: photos, videos, detailed notes, uploaded everything to Break Glass. 3 days later, the cooling pipe tremor escalated to visible shaking. I sent Evan a formal warning email with video attached, CC'd to maintenance. The subject line read, "Urgent cooling system failure imminent." His response came within minutes. "Rachel, your alarmist tendencies have been noted. The system is operating within normal parameters according to QuickPing analytics. Please focus on your assigned duties. I forwarded the entire exchange to my personal email. Then I waited. Because in 12 years, I'd learned that some lessons have to be learned the hard way, and Evan Carver was about to get his education. The art of building a case against someone isn't about catching them in one spectacular failure. It's about documenting the pattern of willful negligence that leads to disaster. I became a forensic accountant of incompetence, a silent auditor of Evan's digital revolution. My routine never changed on the surface. I arrived at 6:30 a.m., made my rounds, attended meetings, nodded when Evan spouted his innovation gospel, but underneath, I was methodical. Every photograph time-stamped, every email archived, every conversation followed up with a just-to-confirm message that created a paper trail even Evan couldn't delete. "You're being paranoid," Linda whispered to me during a lunch break, 3 weeks into the new regime. "He's not going anywhere. Corporate loves him." "I'm being thorough," I corrected, taking another photo of the pressure gauge that had been reading red for 2 days. QuickPing showed it as optimal. Because someone had incorrectly set the parameters, I'd reported it twice. Both reports had been dismissed. The beauty of my approach was its invisibility. While Evan held court about disrupting industrial paradigms, I quietly created spreadsheets correlating his dismissed warnings with subsequent equipment issues. When he bragged about the 32% reduction in unnecessary maintenance tasks, I documented the 400% increase in unusual noises, leaks, and temperature spikes. Jerry from maintenance became my unwitting ally. Not through conspiracy, he was too scared of losing his pension to openly oppose Evan, but through his meticulous habit of sending me FYI emails about every repair request. "Just keeping you in the loop, Rachel," he'd write, attaching photos of worn bearings that should have been caught weeks earlier, cracked seals that routine inspection would have prevented. The break glass folder grew, subfolders within subfolders, each labeled with bland names that revealed nothing to casual viewing. March metrics, equipment logs, compliance notes. Inside were videos of machines shaking themselves toward failure, photos of safety violations, screenshots of Evan dismissing critical warnings. Week 4 brought a gift wrapped in corporate stupidity. Evan decided to showcase his success to regional management through a video tour of the digitally optimized plant floor. He live-streamed it on the company's internal social platform, walking backwards while narrating, nearly tripping over a hydraulic line that shouldn't have been exposed. "As you can see," he said to his phone camera, "we've eliminated redundant physical inspections, saving 12 man-hours per day." Behind him, clearly visible in the frame, line 4 was leaking hydraulic fluid, a puddle that had grown throughout his 10-minute presentation. I screen-recorded the entire thing, but I never confronted him, never sent angry emails, never gave him ammunition to paint me as the bitter employee resisting change. Instead, I became aggressively helpful in the most documented way possible. "Per your innovation initiative," I'd write, "I'm confirming that we're proceeding without backup protocols for the cooling system. Please advise if this understanding is incorrect." His responses were perfect evidence. Correct. Backup systems are redundant in a properly monitored digital environment. Following up on the bearing temperature spike in line 2. Maintenance has suggested immediate inspection. Should I proceed with your standing guidance to trust QuickPing metrics over physical observations? Trust the system, Rachel. That's why we have it. Every exchange went into break glass, every dismissal, every assurance that his app was smarter than 12 years of experience. Marcus quit in week 5. "I can't do it," he told me privately. "When this place burns down, I'm not having my name on it." I asked him to write a letter explaining his concerns. "For my personal records," I said. He did. It went into break glass. The tremor in the cooling pipe evolved into a visible shake. I sent another warning, this time with a comparison video showing the progression over 3 weeks. Evan's response was to schedule another HR meeting about my inability to embrace change and fear-mongering that undermined team confidence. I attended the meeting with a smile, signed their forms, added my notations, photographed everything. When Diane suggested I might be happier in a different role, perhaps one with less resistance to innovation, I responded that I was committed to seeing the digital transformation through. "I want to be here when it all comes together," I said, meaning every word differently than they heard it. The night before, it all went to hell. I backed up break glass to 3 separate cloud services and a physical drive I kept in my car, 63 documents, 47 videos, 216 photos, 18 dismissed warnings about critical systems, 1 employment file showing Evan's attempts to push me out. I slept better that night than I had in weeks, because the cooling pipe wasn't just shaking anymore. It was singing a death song that anyone with experience would recognize, but experience had been thrown in the trash on day 1, along with my laminated checklist. Tomorrow would be educational. I could hardly wait. The cooling pipe's vibration had evolved from a tremor to what I can only describe as a mechanical seizure. Standing 20 feet away, you could feel it through the concrete floor, a rhythmic thrumming that made coffee cups dance on break room tables. It was Thursday afternoon, and I knew we had maybe days, possibly hours, before catastrophic failure. I documented everything one more time. Video from multiple angles, thermal readings showing hotspots that shouldn't exist, the decibel level of the vibration, 78 dB, well above normal operating range. I sent it all to Evan with a subject line that couldn't be ignored: imminent equipment failure, immediate action required. His response came via quick ping notification. System shows green across all metrics. Stop catastrophizing. I forwarded the exchange to my personal email, then did something I hadn't done in 5 weeks. I went to his office. "Evan, you need to look at this," I said, holding up my phone with the thermal imaging. "The pipe is running 40 degrees above spec. When it fails," he corrected, not looking up from his laptop, "if it fails, which it won't, because our predictive algorithm would have flagged it. Your algorithm is using incorrect baseline data. The parameters were set for the new pipes in Section C, not the 15-year-old infrastructure in Section A." He finally looked up, his expression the kind of patronizing patience you'd show a child. "Rachel, I've scheduled you for a digital literacy workshop next week. It'll help you understand how modern systems work." "I understand how pipes work," I said quietly. "When metal fatigue reaches this level..." "That's enough." He stood up, using his height advantage to look down at me. "Your constant negativity is becoming a performance issue. I'm documenting this interaction for your file." "Please do," I said. "Document that on March 28th at 3:47 p.m. I formally warned you about the cooling system failure, in writing and in person. Get out of my office." I left, but not before taking a photo of his dismissive expression. It was petty, but I wanted to remember exactly how he looked when he chose ego over safety. That night, I pulled Jerry aside. "Take a sick day tomorrow," I told him quietly. He studied my face for a long moment. "That bad?" "Just take the day." He nodded. Jerry had been around long enough to read the signs, both in the machinery and in my expression. Friday morning arrived gray and humid, the kind of weather that makes old injuries ache. I arrived at my usual 6:30, did my rounds, noted that the cooling pipe's song had changed pitch, lower now, more ominous. The storage tank pressure gauge was fluttering like a moth against glass. Even the air felt different, charged with the potential energy of imminent failure. I set up my workstation with unusual care, placed my red folder, the physical backup of everything in break glass, in my desk drawer, wore my newest safety gear, the set without any wear marks. If today was going to be documented, I wanted to look the part of someone who'd tried to prevent it. The quick ping notification system had been silent all morning. I checked my phone. The app showed everything as optimal, with a cheerful green checkmark. I screenshot it, noting the timestamp 7:23 a.m. At 7:24 a.m., a sound like God clearing his throat echoed through Section A. The cooling pipe didn't just fail, it divorced itself from reality. The joint that had been vibrating for weeks finally surrendered, sending a jet of superheated coolant in a graceful arc across the floor. The pressure change triggered a cascade-effect storage tank alarms shrieking, emergency valves slamming shut, the main conveyor grinding to a halt with a mechanical scream that made everyone freeze. Then Line 2 joined the symphony. The bearing that hadn't been lubricated properly for a month seized solid, sending a shudder through the entire assembly. The drive motor, suddenly fighting immovable resistance, overloaded in a shower of sparks. The emergency shutdown triggered automatically, the one safety system Evan hadn't managed to digitize because it was hardwired into the building's infrastructure. Red lights bathed everything in apocalyptic glow. Sirens wailed. Workers ran for emergency exits with the practiced efficiency of people who'd drilled for this moment, even if management had recently called those drills unnecessarily disruptive. Through it all, I stood at my station, calmly documenting. Photo of the timestamp when Quick Ping finally registered the failure, 4 minutes after it began. Video of Evan's shift supervisors looking at their phones in confusion, waiting for an app notification to tell them what to do while chaos erupted around them. Screenshot of the empty management response channel in Quick Ping while the old analog emergency phone rang unanswered. Evan himself was nowhere to be seen. His Tesla wasn't in the parking lot. I'd checked. The crisis he'd been warned about for weeks had arrived on a morning when he'd decided to work from home. By 8:00 a.m., the fire department had arrived. By 8:30, the regional safety inspector. By 9:00, something far more interesting. Michael Anders' black Bentley, pulling into the executive parking space that had been gathering dust for 2 years. The CEO of Arden Dynamics had come to see the digital revolution for himself. The aftermath of industrial failure has its own choreography. First come the firefighters, then the inspectors, then the insurance adjusters, and finally, if you're particularly unlucky, the executives. Michael Anders stepped out of his Bentley like a man approaching a crime scene, which, in a way, he was. I watched from the emergency assembly point as he surveyed the damage. The cooling pipe had been isolated, but coolant still dripped from machinery, pooling in rainbow-slicked puddles. Line 2 sat frozen, its seized bearing smoking faintly despite the emergency foam someone had sprayed on it. The storage tank vented steam in irregular bursts, like a dying whale. Michael didn't head for the management offices. Instead, he walked directly onto the floor. His Italian shoes splashing through coolant, his suit jacket discarded and sleeves rolled up. He stopped at each damaged section, taking photos with his phone, asking questions of the floor workers who'd stayed behind. "How long was the pipe vibrating?" he asked Tom from second shift. "Weeks, sir. We reported it multiple times through the app." "Show me." Tom pulled up Quick Ping, trying to find his reports. The app crashed twice before he could retrieve them. Michael's expression grew darker with each attempt. That's when Evan finally arrived, his Tesla screeching into the parking lot. He practically ran toward the CEO, his face already arranged in an expression of concerned leadership. "Michael, I was coordinating the response remotely." "Were you—" Michael's voice was deadly quiet. "Show me the coordination." Evan pulled out his phone, fumbling with Quick Ping. "The system shows—" "The system," Michael interrupted, "shows nothing, because your system failed to predict, prevent, or even properly report a catastrophic failure that's going to cost us approximately $3 million and 4 weeks of downtime. The workers must have ignored the notifications." "What notifications?" I stepped forward, my red folder in hand. "The ones that never arrived because the app doesn't function in half the building, or the ones set to Pacific time, or maybe the ones that showed everything as optimal while the plant was literally falling apart." Michael turned to me. "You are—" "Rachel Morris, operations supervisor, 12 years without a major incident until 6 weeks ago." "What changed 6 weeks ago?" I handed him the folder. Everything. He opened it right there on the plant floor. Coolant still dripping from overhead pipes. His eyes moved across the pages. Printed emails, photos, timestamps, warnings. Occasionally he'd look up at Evan, then back down at the documentation. "This warning," he said, holding up my email from Thursday. "This was sent yesterday." "Yes, sir." "And the response?" I showed him my phone, Evan's dismissal via Quick Ping, telling me to stop catastrophizing. Michael continued through the folder. The silence stretched so long that even the dripping coolant seemed to pause. Finally, he looked up. "Evan, do you have any documentation of successful preventive maintenance using your system?" "The app has all—" "The app that doesn't work in half the building." "That's an exaggeration." Michael walked to the break room, still carrying my folder. We followed like ducklings. He went straight to the trash bin. The same gray one where Evan had thrown my checklist 6 weeks ago. It hadn't been emptied recently. The cleaning crew had been cut back as part of the optimization. He reached in and pulled out my laminated sheets. Still intact. Coffee-stained, but readable. This, he held it up. This is what you replaced. It's outdated, Evan started. It prevented incidents for 12 years. Your system caused 1 in 6 weeks. Michael turned to me. Walk me through your old inspection routine. I did. Every checkpoint, every redundancy, every fail-safe that had been eliminated in favor of digital efficiency. Michael asked detailed questions, the kind only someone with actual engineering background would know to ask. Evan stood silent, his phone occasionally buzzing with quick ping notifications that no one acknowledged. Write up your full report, Michael told me. Everything, every warning, every incident, every ignored protocol. I want it comprehensive. I can have it ready by Monday. Have it ready by 3, he turned to Evan. You'll wait in the conference room. Don't speak to anyone. Don't send any emails. Just wait. As Evan walked away, his shoulders rigid with humiliation, Michael studied the ruined machinery. How did you know? He asked me quietly. How did you know it would fail today? I didn't know it would be today specifically, I admitted. But when you ignore enough warning signs, failure isn't a possibility, it's an inevitability. I just made sure everything was documented when it happened. He nodded slowly, still holding my old checklist. This is going to get interesting. Sir, Evan has been sending updates to the board about his revolutionary success here. 30% reduction in maintenance costs, 50% increase in efficiency metrics. He's been positioning for a promotion to Regional Director of Innovation. I said nothing, but I thought about the email chain I'd archived where Evan had outlined his plans to expand Quick Ping to all 7 Arden facilities. 3 o'clock, Michael repeated. Full report. As he walked back to his Bentley, still carrying my coffee-stained checklist, I realized the morning's mechanical failure was just the opening act. The real show was about to begin. Michael Anders had commandeered the main conference room, transforming it into a war room. Legal had arrived. 3 lawyers in sharp suits who set up laptops and began requesting documents. The head of corporate safety flew in from Chicago. Even the board sent a representative, a silver-haired woman who said nothing but took notes in shorthand. I presented my report at exactly 3:00 p.m., not just the folder, but a full PowerPoint with graphs showing the correlation between Evan's changes and the spike in incidents. Slide after slide of dismissed warnings, ignored protocols, and that beautiful timeline showing how every decision led inexorably to this morning's disaster. The bearing in line 2, I explained, clicking to a photo of the seized component. Failed after 6 missed lubrication cycles. Each miss was due to the app's time zone error, which I reported 3 times. Click, here are the reports. Click, here are the dismissals. The lawyers typed furiously. The safety director's face grew progressively grayer. Michael sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Evan waited in the adjacent conference room, visible through the glass wall. He'd been there for 5 hours, his phone confiscated, watching us dissect his failure. Occasionally, he'd stand and pace, running his hands through his hair, his designer sneakers squeaking against the floor. At 4:30, Michael called him in. Explain to me, Michael said without preamble, how you achieved a 30% reduction in maintenance costs. Evan straightened, sensing an opportunity. By eliminating redundancies and by canceling preventive maintenance and calling it redundancy, I interrupted, sliding a document across the table. Here's the actual cost analysis. We saved $47,000 in maintenance over 6 weeks. This morning's failure will cost us $3 million minimum, plus downtime, plus potential contract penalties, plus OSHA fines. The system would have worked if what? Michael's voice was dangerously soft. If the building had better cell coverage, if the workers had ignored their experience in favor of an app, if machinery had agreed to fail according to your algorithm's schedule. Evan's phone, sitting on the table, suddenly lit up with notifications. Quick ping alerts, all delayed, all reporting the morning's failures hours after they'd occurred. The irony was so perfect that even the lawyer stopped typing to stare. I need to send an update to the board, Evan said, reaching for his phone. No, Michael said. You don't? What happened next would become legend in Arden Dynamics history, told and retold in break rooms across all 7 facilities. Evan, in his desperation, made a fatal error. He grabbed his phone and started typing frantically, probably trying to get his version of events out before Michael could act. He typed for 30 seconds, then hit send. "What did you just do?" Michael asked, his voice arctic. "I sent a clarification to the board about today's incident. It's important they understand the full context." Michael's phone buzzed, then the safety director's, then the lawyer's, then mine, one by one. Phones lit up throughout the building. Evan had sent his clarification all right, but instead of selecting the board distribution list, he'd hit reply all on an earlier company-wide email chain about the Digital Transformation Initiative. 437 employees had just received his message. I pulled it up on my phone and had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. It was a masterpiece of deflection and blame shifting. Team, today's incident was the result of senior staff resistance to change and deliberate sabotage of the quick ping system. Certain individuals, particularly Rachel Morris, have consistently undermined the digital transformation through fear-mongering and refusal to adapt. The failure was not systematic, but rather the consequence of a toxic culture of resistance among long-term employees who prioritize their job security over innovation. I have documentation of multiple instances where Morris specifically instructed workers to ignore app notifications and rely on outdated methods. The board should be aware that the real issue isn't the system, but the people who refuse to use it properly. Evan Carver, Director of Innovation. The conference room went silent. Even the lawyers stopped typing. Michael stood slowly. "Did you just accuse our most experienced supervisor of sabotage in writing to the entire company?" Evan's face had gone pale. He looked at his phone, then at the distribution list. "I meant to. That wasn't supposed to." "To go to everyone?" I asked innocently. Funny how technology can betray you like that. The responses started rolling in immediately. Jerry from maintenance replied all. "Morris warned about every failure. I have the emails." Tom from second shift added, "The app never worked. We reported it weekly." Marcus, who'd quit weeks ago, somehow still on the distribution list, sent, "I resigned because of this exact situation. Morris was the only one trying to prevent this disaster." Within 10 minutes, Evan's email had generated 43 reply-all responses, each one contradicting his narrative, each one supporting my documentation. The head of IT finally killed the email chain, but the damage was done. Evan had created his own undeniable company-wide evidence of his incompetence and willingness to throw others under the bus. Michael let him read the responses for exactly 5 minutes. Then he spoke. "You're suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you out. Your company equipment stays here. And Evan?" He paused at the door. "That email you just sent legal will be very interested in your claim about having documentation of sabotage. I assume you'll be able to produce it." Evan's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. There was no documentation because there had been no sabotage. Just an experienced supervisor watching a predictable disaster unfold and making sure everyone knew who was responsible when it did. The emergency all-hands meeting was called for Monday morning, 7:00 a.m. sharp. The entire plant floor had been cleaned over the weekend, though the ghost of Friday's disaster lingered in the form of new welding marks where pipes had been repaired and the acrid smell of industrial solvent. Michael Anders stood at the front of the break room, my old laminated checklist in his hand. Behind him, a projection showed 2 photographs side by side, the plant floor from 6 weeks ago, orderly and functional, and Friday's chaos, frozen in the moment of failure. "I want to be clear about what happened here," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "This was not an accident. This was not an act of God. This was a predictable, preventable failure caused by arrogance, inexperience, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what innovation actually means." He held up my checklist, the coffee stains visible even from the back row. "This document represents 12 years of accumulated knowledge, 12 years of prevented failures, identified risks, and refined procedures. It was thrown in the trash on day 1 of our digital transformation." The room was silent except for the hum of the vending machines. Rachel Morris warned us 17 times about the cooling system alone. Click, the screen showed my email chain, timestamps highlighted. Each warning was dismissed. Each concern was labeled as resistance to change. Each piece of documented evidence was ignored in favor of an app that couldn't function in half our building. He turned to me. Rachel, would you please explain what would have happened if the emergency shutdown system hadn't engaged? I stood, feeling every eye in the room on me. The storage tank would have continued to build pressure until either the relief valve failed or the tank itself ruptured. Best case scenario, we'd have had a chemical release requiring EPA involvement. Worst case, an explosion that could have killed people. And this was preventable. With basic maintenance and monitoring, yes, the kind we'd been doing for 12 years. Michael nodded. Evan Carver is no longer with the company. His entire digital transformation program has been suspended pending review. But that's not why we're here. He paused, scanning the room. We're here because I need each of you to understand that your experience, your knowledge, your instincts, these aren't obstacles to progress. They're the foundation of it. He clicked to a new slide showing Evan's reply all email. Someone in the back actually gasped. This email, Michael said, accused Rachel Morris of sabotage. It claimed that experienced workers were the problem, not the solution. It suggested that 12 years without a major incident was less valuable than 6 weeks of Silicon Valley buzzwords. His voice hardened. This email was sent to all of you, which means all of you deserve to know the truth. He clicked again. The screen filled with my documentation. Pages and pages of warnings, reports, photographs. This is what actual leadership looks like. Not throwing accusations when things go wrong, but documenting problems before they become disasters. Not silencing dissent, but listening to expertise. Not disrupting for the sake of disruption, but improving what works and fixing what doesn't. The lawyers had advised against this meeting. I learned later, too much liability, too much admission of fault, but Michael had overruled them. They deserve to know, he'd said. They deserve to know we value them. Effective immediately, Michael continued. Rachel Morris is promoted to Senior Director of Operations for the Hawthorne facility. She'll report directly to me, not through regional management. Her first task will be implementing a new safety protocol that combines the best of our traditional methods with actually functional technology. The applause started slowly, probably from Jerry, then spread through the room like wildfire. I stood there, feeling my face burn, watching Evan's shift supervisors clap the loudest, freed from the confusion of the past 6 weeks. One more thing, Michael said when the noise died down. Evan has been enrolled in a mandatory training program as part of his severance agreement. It's a 6-week course on industrial safety protocols. He smiled for the first time since arriving. The instructor is Rachel Morris. He starts tomorrow. The laughter that erupted could probably be heard in the parking lot. But sir, I said, genuinely surprised, he's no longer an employee. We can't require... His severance package is contingent on completing the training and passing a certification exam. Your certification exam. He either learns what he should have respected, or he forfeits 6 months of pay. I thought about Evan having to sit in my training room, taking notes on everything he'd dismissed, learning the protocols he'd thrown in the trash, having to pass my test to get his money. The poetry of it was perfect. I'll need to update my training materials, I said. Whatever you need. Michael started to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Rachel, that folder you gave me, the red one. Legal wants to know if you have any other documentation. I thought about the break glass folder. Gigabytes of evidence I hadn't even touched. I might have a few additional files. Good. Evan's threatening to sue for wrongful termination. Says we have no proof of gross negligence. Michael's smile was sharp. I told legal not to worry, that you were thorough. As the meeting dispersed, workers stopped to shake my hand, to tell me about problems they'd been afraid to report, to share their own documentation of the past 6 weeks' chaos. The morning shift bell rang, and people moved to their stations with something I hadn't seen in 6 weeks: confidence. I walked to my new office, the one with windows overlooking the plant floor. On my desk was a gift from the maintenance crew, my old checklist, laminated fresh, with a bronze plaque reading 12 years of excellence, 0 compromises. Tomorrow, Evan Carver would sit in my training room, forced to learn everything he'd arrogantly dismissed, But today, I had a plant to run, the right way, the safe way. The way it should have been run all along. Tuesday morning, 8:00 a.m., I stood at the front of the training room, watching Evan Carver walk through the door in jeans and a wrinkled polo shirt, a far cry from his designer suits. He chose a seat in the back corner, as far from me as possible, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. "Welcome to Industrial Safety Certification," I said, my voice professionally neutral. "This 6-week course covers everything you need to know about maintaining a zero-incident workplace." 5 other students were enrolled, all new hires who actually wanted to be there. They had notebooks ready, pens poised. Evan had nothing but his phone, which I immediately addressed. "All phones in the box by the door. This is hands-on learning. You'll need both hands." He looked like he wanted to argue, then remembered his severance package. 6 months of pay hung in the balance. He placed his phone in the box with exaggerated care. "Let's start with basics," I said, pulling out a fresh copy of the checklist he'd thrown away. "This document has prevented approximately $14 million in damages over 12 years. Each line represents a lesson learned, usually the hard way. Today, we're going to understand why every single checkpoint matters." I walked them through it all. The cooling system that needed daily inspection, because a hairline crack in 2018 had taught us that visual checks caught what sensors missed. The lubrication schedule that seemed excessive until you understood that our humidity levels accelerated bearing wear by 30%. The storage tank pressure monitoring that had prevented 3 near misses in my tenure alone. Evan had to write it all down, by hand, because the certification exam would be written, not digital. "Question," one of the new hires asked. "Why not use an app to track all this?" I smiled. "Excellent question. Apps can be useful tools, but they're tools, not replacements for knowledge and experience. Let me show you what happens when we rely solely on technology." I pulled up the quick ping failure data on the projector. Every missed alert, every delayed notification, every false optimal reading while machinery was failing. I didn't mention Evan by name, but his face grew redder with each slide. "The person who implemented this system," I said carefully, "made a critical error. They assumed that innovation meant discarding everything that came before. Real innovation builds on proven foundations. It enhances what works, rather than replacing it wholesale." Week after week, Evan attended, silent, seething, but present. He learned about metallurgy and stress fractures. He studied vibration patterns and temperature tolerances. He memorized the emergency procedures he'd never bothered to read. During practical exercises, his soft hands blistered from actually touching the equipment he'd only seen through screens. The other students started asking him questions, not knowing who he was. "Hey, can you help me understand this pressure reading?" He had to answer. It was part of participation grades. The day we covered the cooling system failure, I was particularly thorough. "This is actual footage from last month," I said, playing the video of the pipe shaking itself apart. "Notice the progression. Day 1, barely visible tremor. Day 5, observable vibration. Day 12, visible shaking. Day 28, catastrophic failure. At every stage, intervention could have prevented the final outcome." "What caused it to be ignored for so long?" a student asked. "Arrogance," I said, looking directly at Evan. Someone in management thought they knew better than 12 years of documented experience. They trusted an algorithm over the people who'd been listening to these machines for decades. Evan's certification exam was scheduled for Friday afternoon of week 6. 3 hours. Comprehensive. Covering everything from basic safety protocols to complex failure analysis. He'd studied. I'd give him that. I'd seen him in the break room during lunches, actually reading the manuals he'd once called obsolete. He finished in 2 hours and 43 minutes. I graded it that night. He passed, barely, 71%, 1 point above failing. But here's the thing about barely passing. It still counts. He'd learned enough to not kill anyone through negligence, which was all the certification really required. His severance was safe. Monday morning, I found an email from him in my inbox. 2 words, lesson learned. I archived it in my break glass folder, now renamed Lessons Taught. Later that day, Michael called. "Evan withdrew his wrongful termination suit," he said. His lawyer advised him that spending 6 weeks documenting his own incompetence probably wasn't the strongest legal strategy. I looked out my office window at the plant floor running smoothly below. Line 2 hummed contentedly with fresh bearings. The cooling system flowed steady and strong through new pipes. The storage tank pressure gauges held steady, monitored by both sensors and human eyes. Jerry walked by, clipboard in hand. Yes, clipboard, checking items off a list. He saw me watching and gave me a thumbs up. Behind him, a new hire was learning to read the machines, to listen to their rhythms, to understand their language. She had the Quick Ping app on her phone, but she also had a laminated checklist in her pocket, belt and suspenders, traditional knowledge and modern tools, the way it should be. My phone buzzed with a notification from our new hybrid monitoring system, one that combined digital efficiency with human verification, a minor temperature variance in Section C, already addressed by maintenance, confirmed by visual inspection. The system worked because it was built on a foundation of experience, not in spite of it. I thought about Evan. Somewhere out there with his certification and his hard-earned 71%, he'd probably find another job, another company to optimize. But maybe, just maybe, he'd remember the 6 weeks he spent learning why some things shouldn't be disrupted, why experience matters, why a coffee-stained checklist might be worth more than a cutting-edge app. The afternoon shift bell rang. I watched the smooth transition of workers, each one knowing exactly what to check, what to monitor, what to listen for. 0 incidents in the 3 months since Evan's departure. Back to our old standard. Back to boring. Beautiful safety. Some people learn lessons the easy way, some the hard way, and some, like Evan Carver, learn them at 71%. Just barely enough to get by, but hopefully enough to never forget. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate karma and workplace justice. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of patience and calculated revenge, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts or similar experiences. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's simply letting someone's arrogance become their own downfall. Until next time. Stay smart, document everything, and never underestimate the power of a good checklist.